Happy Tuesday, my friends. Adam, you look like you finally made it home after, I don't know, you've been traveling for what, a month now at this point? Finally back home in the lovely area of Costa Rica. How's the travels?
It wasn't a month. It was like 2 weeks, but boy, it felt like a month, man. I am not at this age, at this time of my life, bro. I am out of traveling, man. Just give me the teleport system, bro. It's the only way I want to go now. I just want to teleport. But it's good to be home, man, back in Costa Rica and back with the pig and the dogs and the cats bothering me. So back to real life. I love it. But I'm excited to talk about this one. I tell you, one of the big takeaways from Bitcoin Nashville was this idea of privacy. Lots of talk around privacy. I think we all kind of feel it, that crypto's kind of lost the plot with privacy. I was on a space I was telling you offline with David Chaum yesterday, you know, one of the leaders in kind of privacy and obviously cryptography. He's the GOAT. Talking with him about it, he's like completely focused on this. I think it's something that, like crypto, we just have to solve. You know, it's not one of the things that moves the needle for the user, but it's something that we as a community just we have to solve this issue. And so I'm excited to talk about this today.
Yeah, so the gentleman I've been talking with, it goes by Chair. He'll be joining us here a little bit later. We do have, I believe, at least one person in the crowd, Vaclav, who is a core contributor at the Logos Network in Waku. I'll give a brief explanation of how this even came to be, which is kind of fun, because we've had a handful of private conversations or privacy-focused conversations over the last 2 years on this show. But as you mentioned, it's always been kind of, the conversations have always been in and out, and it's mostly been focused around coins. I remember back in 2017, initially when I joined the space, there was a focus on Monero as the currency, and I think there was a few other coins like Beam, and I forget, there was a handful of them. And then you have obviously had the mixers that came in as well, right? Samurai Wallet, and then on Ethereum, you have what's one on Ethereum called? Tornado Cash.
Tornado Cash.
But obviously, the two developers behind those teams have been arrested recently, right? So little concerning there. So even just diving into the space of privacy, it takes a lot of really it was really a lot of admiration, but it takes a lot of commitment to really go against the grain, and you can really be attacked from multiple vectors, from governments and crime agencies and so on and so forth here. But
Totally.
initially, how we set up,
like you always have been, right? I mean, it's like just hearing the stories of early cryptography, like the people who were like promoting it and kind of inventing the entire space, they were at risk of going to jail early on, right? I mean, it was at this like tipping point where the U.S. government almost made it like a national security issue, where if you were using cryptography, you were going to jail. There's like these famous T-shirts that like Adam Back and whoever was using at the time, where it's like if you were using this code, like you're going to jail, like crazy stuff. I mean, we take for granted that it's kind of something to that we all should be able to use, but obviously the fight is still very much here, and we're kind of at the forefront of that fight.
Yeah. So before I do pass it off to speakers, so initially how this conversation was set up, somebody who's a fan of Emblem Vault had reached out to me to look into something called Logos Network. And of course, generally, I'm always a pretty interested person. I went to look into it, and turns to find out this was a kind of a privacy-focused tech stack that has multiple layers that are really composed of it. One of it being Waku. And as I dove a little bit more into it, I found out Waku was one of the teams, or maybe we'll get a little more clarification of the team who did the Status ICO back in 2017 for about, I think it was around $100 million, one of the largest ones, which was a messaging protocol. Turns out now we have Waku here that has been building this for quite some time. So I'd love to dive into this, really kind of understand what the Logos Network is, how Waku plays a role in this, and then the progress that I've seen as of recently. There's which I forget what there's a few protocols that also use Waku that are quite popular as well. So it's been interesting diving into all of this. But I'll pass it off, and we could start with Guru, or I guess Hacky Guru, who's here on stage with us, and then we could pass it over to Vaklav if I have one, if I do have that pronounced right. But I'd love to pass it off to you, Guru, if you're here.
Perfect. Thanks for the opportunity, first of all. Yeah, about Logos and IFT as a whole. On top of the umbrella, we have Institute of Free Technology, IFT, and under which we have different projects like Status, Waku, Codex, and a lot of other projects that support the network state movement. So as far as Status is concerned, it's the application layer where we deploy our own technology. And we also have Logos, which is the movement building and activism side of things. And Waku is the communications protocol, which is open source, available for all the projects to use. Even now, we have the graph protocol using Waku. We have Status itself using Waku.
Hey, Guru, sorry to stop you. Jake, can you barely hear him?
It's a little light, yeah.
Maybe if you're on a headset, maybe just speak directly into your phone, or just change your mic. Are you able to change your mic?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm going to do it.
Sure.
No problem. We could pass it off to one of our other guests who's also on stage. Appreciate both of you also for joining us, so we could really dive into this, especially as Adam and I, who are fans of privacy but don't really know some of the technical backgrounds, will be really enlightening for this conversation.
Hey, folks. If I may, my name is Václav. Work for Waku as a solutions engineer, so I help projects integrate Waku. So if you want to know who is using Waku, I should probably know. But yeah, what you said, the cypherpunk history and the encryption wars, crypto wars in the US. There is a great documentary about that. Cypherpunks Write Code. You can search for it. I think it's on YouTube and a bunch of other platforms as well. And yeah, that's absolutely right. And many people think that these crypto wars ended, but they actually never ended. We have similar concerns right now with in the EU with pet control regulations and child sexual abuse regulations that are trying to peek into our conversations in end-to-end encrypted messaging apps and trying to make sure that some government bodies can watch what we send to each other in case we might send something about sexual abuse, children, or other topics. So privacy is a big concern, and it's getting bigger. I think UK passed a similar bill as well recently. US has their own surveillance bills being passed around. So this is a general problem where right now governments still want to control encryption or break encryption as much as they can. And then obviously also big tech following every single step you do online, and then either selling your data or abusing the data towards getting more of your attention, I guess we could say. So yeah, this is something. This is a part of things we are trying to solve for a Web3 ecosystem, where originally where this all comes from the cypherpunks. This was a concern. So we moved away from that, and we only cared. We as an industry started to care more about the number goes up than technology actually solves an inherent problem, which is either decentralization or privacy or governance that's fair to everyone.
Yeah, it is interesting. So I'm gonna read off a few definitions and key items that I see on the website as well. It says Waku is a family of robust censorship-resistant communication protocols designed to enable privacy-focused messaging for Web3 apps. I see that Waku's integrated into about 4 different protocols, including the Graph, which I think is the most popular one here, Railgun, Mr. Fox, and it looks like Akash. On the website itself, it says that Waku's powering a communication is powering the communication layer of the Logos technology stack. Logos is a grassroots movement building the infrastructure for trust to minimize corruption-resistant governing services and social institutions for peaceful people worldwide. Right, quite a quite a little bit of a mouthful here, but diving into we'll call it the privacy layer of this. It looks like here, as Guru mentioned earlier, that Waku is a component of status. But from my conversations that I'd had with Matthew offline and also Chair, who I think may be joining us later, I think Waku was spun off from the status ICO due to the status or the messaging protocol not being satisfactory to what I think you guys had in mind, or some component of that. Could you dive into some of the history of how you guys got to this? Because from what my understanding is that you've been building this for quite a long time, going literally all the way back to 2017, and that it's gone through a handful of different implementations here, as I have the roadmap here pulled up.
For sure. So you're right. It started with status, but the start was slightly different. Status started as a core messenger on top of Ethereum, and the idea was, if you're familiar with the original Ethereum traffic, it was not just consensus, which it is now, basically, or consensus-based execution. It was also storage and also communication. So there was Swarm for storage. I mean, Swarm is still around. You can still use it. But the Whisper for communication just disappeared completely. And part of that story is that it was also based on proof of work. And if you are trying to send a message, regardless whether it's a message as a human-to-human communication, or whether it's a message that goes from your phone to your backend server or something, it's not great if your phone has to do a lot of compute for sending a message, right? So Status tried to use Whisper, realized very quickly that burning through phones is not a solution. So they redesigned Whisper, reconfigured Whisper so that it's less resource intensive, but it still did not solve the scalability problem. Like if you try to onboard 10,000 people on top of that, it wouldn't scale. So that was kind of Waku V1 was redesigned Whisper with almost no proof of work included, but then also that is not DOS protected, which is what proof of work generally does to peer-to-peer networks. And it's also not, it was still not scalable. So they designed something, they designed something called Waku V2, which is where we are at now. And as part of that, one group that spun off out of Status initially is called VAC, V-A-C. You can go to vac.dev, vac.dev, and it's a research group. It's a deep research and applied research group. And they initially came up with Waku V2. They designed it, they wrote the specifications, did some initial implementation. And when it matured enough, they spun it up into a separate project, which is where we are right now, is what me and Guru are working on, and probably 15 other people, as a separate infrastructure layer for Web3 communication. Now, when I say communication, I don't mean just what Status is doing. Status is building a very specific user application on top of the Waku infra, where they use Waku infrastructure layer to send human messages and obviously some control messages as well from the application. But we also support any other type of application that needs messaging. And now messaging for ordinary humans means me and you sending messages to each other, posting cat pictures, or I don't know, vacations or whatnot. But for distributed systems engineer or architect, messaging means there are multiple components of an application that need to communicate, and they need to exchange some messages, some data, and they need to do it reliably, they need to do it fast and in a scalable way. And that's what Waku is aiming to provide. So if you have a front end and a back end and they need to communicate, if you go through HTTP, then it can be surveilled. If you go through Waku, it cannot, and it cannot be censored. If you have multiple backend components or building a decentralized network, like for example, another project that is using us called Dria, they are a project focusing on generating synthetic training data for AI. They've built a decentralized node network for generating the synthetic data on top of Waku, where instead of building their own peer-to-peer network, they leverage Waku to distribute those messages between the nodes. I hope it clarifies.
No, it's actually quite interesting. From the Emblem Vault side, right? That's where Adam, Chris work. And we've learned a lot. We've learned a ton about cross-chain messaging and how these different protocols interact in terms of interoperability. And that's what initially kind of sparked my interest here. As myself and some of the developers on the team, we've been exploring all of these different variety of ways of how these different protocols interact with each other. But this was the first time I'd ever come across a messaging protocol that was privacy focused, which initially and still does kind of capture my attention, although I don't understand it fully. To me, it seems like this is kind of like the no-brainer, right? So there's kind of, to dissect this, is there's two ways that there could be a privacy layer for humans, right? If I want to send a message to Adam across a blockchain, right, I can have it sent in text. Or if I need two different types of protocols to interact for smart contract reasons, right, or interoperability or cross-chain swapping, or et cetera. This is something where Waku could come in and really play a role. Do I have that correct?
Okay, so we need to step back a bit more, and I need to make one more clarification. Waku itself is blockchain agnostic, and there is no direct interaction with blockchain from Waku. Waku is really just a network transport layer for messages. So you can't do, like we do not involve a chain, any blockchain, in sending messages across the network. Waku is really just a peer-to-peer network of nodes that do not keep history. There is no ledger of the messages being sent. It's really just for transferring the messages. So when you ask about privacy and how privacy works, so if you use general blockchain like Ethereum, right, you submit a transaction which is completely public and open, so that would be solved by encryption. But the problem is that you are submitting transaction as you, because blockchains these days are mostly pseudonymous, not anonymous. So as long as I know your address, I can trace all your steps on chain. And the second part of that is that you are submitting transaction to someone, regardless whether it's a contract or whether it's another EOA, another address of another human, right? So I have a sender, I have a recipient, and in Ethereum, I also have the content. So when we talk about privacy messaging, and now forget anything about blockchain, right? This is really, if we go with very specific example and we go with status itself, I have Jake and I have Adam, and they want to exchange messages without anyone knowing they are doing so. So I need to encrypt the messages. Okay, that's easy. We know how to do that for 50 years, right? That's fine. But if I don't want anyone to know that Jake sent a message to Adam, or if I just want to know, if I just want to make sure that nobody knows that Jake sent a message or that Adam received a message, I need a communication layer that is 100% focused on privacy. So how do I do that? Is normally, if you send something over the network, you need to specify a recipient. It's a URL. I'm connecting to a server, and there is a DNS, there is a URL, there is an IP address. And then also I am sending that message. So I am the one, my IP is locked somewhere on the server. So what Waku does is that if you publish a message, there is no sender specified and there is no recipient specified. The message bubbles through the whole network and basically touches all the nodes. There are some optimizations, but let's say for simplicity's sake, it touches all the nodes. It is received by all the nodes. Then the nodes have to figure out that they can use it. So they will probably try to decrypt it. There are some filtering mechanisms, but only Adam can decrypt it because it may be encrypted by his public key. So he has his private key and he decrypts the message. And then, he gets a lot of other messages, but he can't do anything about them because they are not for him. So he can't decrypt them and he can filter them out by some other parameters. But there is no sender specified. So maybe the sender is specified in the encrypted content by you signing the message, and then he can extract that signature. And then he is the only one that understands the message. So although everyone else saw the message, he is the only one that can read it. So those are a few kind of features that you need. This is called, for example, unlinkability, and that you cannot link sender and recipient, and that you need to have privacy preserving communication. Now, censorship-resistant is another one, because if you are going through a centralized server, if there is one endpoint that we all go through, that server can say, hey, I will not relay messages from Jake to Adam because I don't like Jake. Waku cannot do that because there is a peer-to-peer network of nodes. So I can randomly pick any node in the network, and I can relay my message to that node or multiple nodes, and they will relay blindly the message to others. And if some nodes decide to censor the message for some reason because they don't like some of the filtering parameters, they will eventually be kicked out of the network because they are not good peers, because they are not sending all the messages and they are censoring them. Those are all the properties that Waku implements and that Waku builds on. It's very complicated to get that working. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, because my brain goes to, messaging apps, right? And I think of Telegram, and we all kind of know how that's not, it's a centralized system, but then it goes to like Signal. Okay, Signal is the difference between like you and a Signal is that, or Waku and a Signal is Signal runs through centralized servers while this is a decentralized server network. Is that the difference there?
That's a one major difference, yes.
Okay.
One major.
It's probably the key difference. Yeah.
And from another side of this, would you classify Waku and this decentralized node messaging system something similar to ZK or zero knowledge technology, which has been primarily kind of the quote unquote premier privacy technology in the blockchain space? Would you classify this in the same area, or if there's a difference, could you help discern those?
So if you think about what zero knowledge is, it is a mathematical proof that I know something that I don't want to tell you, but I can prove to you by sending you this proof. that I know that secret, right? That's the basic use case or the basic functioning of zero knowledge. So you cannot put it in an equation, really, like zero knowledge and Waku, because zero knowledge by itself does not distribute any messages. It does not distribute any content. It can only prove something without revealing that something. So we actually use zero knowledge. Waku relies on zero knowledge for one part of things, and that is rate limiting and DOS protection. Because in peer-to-peer network, often what the problem is a spam. If I can join a network as a random user and just sending messages, then everyone else will get those messages because we are in a peer-to-peer network. And if I'm not limited in any way, then I will just flood the network with messages, and everyone else will be fucked. The network will be broken. So how we use zero knowledge for that? You can do rate limiting very easily these days, maybe based on IP addresses, maybe based on an address and staking and things like that. But the problem is that it breaks privacy again. So if I track your IP address and I prohibit you from sending too many messages, I have to know who you are. Everyone else has to track that IP address. I have to make sure that I keep it for a very long time and things like that. We want to keep these things private. So we use something called RLN, rate limiting modifiers, and basic working of that is that you as a user register in a smart contract, and you register a secret in the smart contract. Well, you register a hash of that secret in the smart contract so that you don't reveal that secret. But based on that secret and that registration in the smart contract, which forms a Merkle tree, which basically is just a tree with all the members in hashed together to one root, you can prove that you are part of the membership set without revealing which member you are. And then when you publish a message over Waku, you attach this proof with every single message. So all the nodes can verify that you are a member, and each member has some limit of messages. So if you send too many messages, I think right now it's like 100 messages per 10 minutes. So if you send 105 messages per 10 minutes, the nodes will see the proofs, too many proofs basically in those 10 minutes, and will drop your messages. And by that will not allow you to flood the network. I mean, this is pretty technical detail. Sorry for that, but that's how we use zero knowledge right now. No, you can't say it's equality. Zero knowledge can be one component on a privacy-focused system. I can give another example, or one thing that I heard recently from Nomos people. So you talked about Logos stack, and one part of Logos is Nomos. Nomos is going to be a new layer 1 blockchain, which is completely private. And when I say completely private, we have some solutions on top of Ethereum which has privacy. For example, Railgun, which is also using Waku. It allows you to shield tokens. You get a zero knowledge based address, and then you can interact with smart contracts, and you can interact with other people who use this system, and but nobody can see the interactions. And then you unshield the tokens at the end, and you have some different amount of tokens, but nobody knows what happened in between, right? So that's very useful. Vitalik Buterin is using Railgun quite a lot and tweets about them. Now, the problem is that that's a layer on top of Ethereum, but then everything down is still public and open and not private. So if I am a validator on Ethereum and I am trying to validate some transactions and produce some blocks, there is in US these OFAC sanctions. For example, you mentioned Tornado Cash, so they are sanctioning Tornado Cash addresses. Any address that touches Tornado Cash is sanctioned. And if you are a validator and block producer in US for Ethereum, you are not supposed to touch these addresses or include transactions from these addresses into the blocks. But that's kind of that censorship and also self-censorship. I have to self-censor myself so that in case they start coming for these validators, I will not be in trouble. So Nomos, for example, will be heavily based on ZK so that even validators have the privacy. So you cannot trace a transaction being included into a block to a validator that's included into a block. And those are components like ZK is extremely important component for privacy right now, but you need a lot of other pieces fit together and be very carefully crafted so that you have a privacy preserving system. How would it make sense?
Very, very interesting. So a few comments. We have some people on the live stream as well, making some comparisons. Somebody said this sounds like the Secret Network. Somebody also said Secret Network has a bridge to Monero as well, following on the conversation. I'm going to make a few other notes here to hopefully make some parallels to the crypto space. The 4 protocols that Waku is currently integrated in. I'm going to give off the definitions of how Waku powers this. One says status, where Waku powers many status super app features, including its private messaging. With the Railgun, the privacy-focused DeFi protocol, Railgun anonymizes Ethereum transactions with Waku. With the Graph, which I think is probably the most popular application of the 4 here, it says Waku powers the GraphCast SDK, enabling the development of Gossip-powered applications within the Graph ecosystem. I've actually recently heard Vitalik talking about Gossip recently. And then something called XMTP, the Inter-Blockchain Account Messaging Protocol. XMTP uses Waku to facilitate communication between nodes in its currently permissioned network, right? So between all 4 of those that Waku is currently integrated, they're all 4 different use cases for anonymizing or privatizing certain areas of information. I also pulled up here on the live stream a press release from Cointelegraph, December 7th, 2023, so about 7 months ago. It says Waku launches the first decentralized privacy-preserving DOS protections for P2P messaging. It goes on to make a comparison. It says, comparatively, the largest number of daily users on a peer-to-peer network was around 150,000, which is BitTorrent in 2008. I think a lot of people are familiar with BitTorrent. The Waku network is set to scale way beyond this, with all peers participating in shared routing layer and focus on preserving privacy. So a lot of stuff going on here, right, in this tech stack. It's not really just a simple plug and play. You really, if you're going to use Waku within your network, you really have to have an understanding of where's the right way to place this kind of technology here. One final question regarding some other privacy focus or some privacy tools in the crypto space. Recently, Adam, who's on the live stream with me, went to the Litecoin conference, which was during Bitcoin Nashville, and there Litecoin has Mimblewimble enabled. And actually, one of the main conversations or themes Adam was mentioning was that Litecoin wants to focus on the privacy layer of Litecoin to move it more to the privacy currency so that they could gain some traction. Could you give us a little bit of an explanation of what Mimblewimble is, and then maybe some differences or some similarities between Waku and Mimblewimble?
To be completely honest, I have no idea what that is. I'm sorry, I have not followed Litecoin, and I'm not extremely deep into Bitcoin itself. So this particular thing, I'm actually probably hearing for the first time in my life.
That's interesting, but actually, one kind of side question about it is when I was talking to David yesterday, one of his beliefs is that, as he put it, I think I posted the tweet up top, privacy can't be added on; it must be built in. And I'd love your kind of view on that. If you feel the same way, like Tornado Cash or mixers or stuff that kind of try to add privacy onto existing blockchain layers. Like, do you feel like, I mean, obviously you guys are maybe building the L1, maybe you already have answered the question myself, but do you feel the same way that it needs to be kind of built into the system on a base layer?
I'll make it short. Yes.
Okay, there you go.
No, it really has to be, because one thing that I haven't, so my story or my history is that I joined Waku completely randomly. Of like, they reached out, I was like, no, thanks. And then a year later, I reached out like, hey, I need a job. And they were like, hey, okay. If you want to join us, we would be happy. And I started working on things. And then I started digging into this privacy hole. And that was a year and a half ago, let's say. And after a couple of months, I was like, okay, this is a serious problem. And I was one of those people that say, oh, I have nothing to hide. I don't worry about things like privacy. Why would I need privacy? I don't do anything bad. But that's not the problem. Like when you do something bad, the problem is that something that is okay today may not be okay tomorrow. And governments change and laws change. And without privacy, like privacy cannot be added ever. Like once you do something out there in the open, you cannot take it back. It works like that in the offline world to some degree, but in online, in digital world, like once you do something, it's logged, it's tracked, and you can't take it back. So if we want to have a privacy system or a system that preserves privacy and that is censorship resistant and fair to everyone and things like that, it has to have a privacy built into it in the lowest, most lowest levels there are, right? Yeah, I mean, that's probably a summary I can get.
Interesting. So I'm going to read off a few more. What is Waku? What isn't Waku? And then I'd love to talk with Chair, who joined us on stage, who's the person I've been communicating with to help set this up. So here, if you go to docs.waku.org, you can go through their documentation. So what isn't Waku? Waku isn't a blockchain, but a network composed of protocols designed for Web3 communication, operating without a need for gas. And then there's eight different notes here of what Waku can be used for. So chat messengers, voting and proposals, NFT marketplaces, state channels, signature exchange for multi-signature wallets, game mechanics for communication, layer 2 coordination, social media platforms. I'm sure this goes much more beyond this, but even trying to make sense of it, having, just some simple explanations for some non-technical, or say some no coders like Adam and myself, it begins to make more sense over time. But I'd love to say hello to Chair, who's joining us here on stage. How are you doing?
Hello, thank you for having me. I am proud to join the no coder, less technical part of the audience.
Chair, would you love to just give us an explanation of your involvement with Waku and why you've decided to, dedicate a portion of your life to building this?
Yeah, 100%. I'm coming up here on almost a year which is crazy that a year has gone by already. I joined Waku about a year ago as the program manager. But actually, technically, I'm part of the Logos Collective as the program manager for Waku. And my sort of crypto origin story goes back to about 2010, 2011, somewhere when Bitcoin was at around $2. And the way it typically goes is I didn't pay attention, and when I saw the price drop, I thought I was a genius. When it went from like $3 to $2, and so I was obviously realized I was a genius for not touching it. And it wasn't until I was starting to go down the self-taught web dev path around 2015, 2016, and I was in an unsanctioned rave in the Joshua Tree Desert, that someone told me that if you think Bitcoin is cool, you should check out Ethereum. And I started reading the very next day. And it was early 2016 at that time. So if you could take yourself back to what the ecosystem and the scene was like back then, and it was like Reddit r Ethereum was my main source of information and news at that time. And what really stuck with me, what really spoke to me, was the description that person gave me on the dance floor at the unsanctioned rave in the Joshua Tree Desert in early 2016, was that it's the world computer, man. It's the world database, man. And it can't be censored. It can't be stopped. You can run whatever program, you can launch whatever token that you want permissionlessly. And that's when it all really clicked for me. And certainly the notion and the sense of permissionlessness had already existed with Bitcoin. But that was the point that it really got me. And so to fast forward 8 years from there until now, the censorship-resistant, permissionless nature of this technology, just blanketing all of quote unquote this technology that we're working with, is maybe the one true chance for humanity to rise up from under sort of the thumb of, let's say, Big Brother, let's say the powers that be, to re-unlock human rights of communication and accessibility. It continues to inspire me. I'm continuing to be inspired by what Waku and the greater Logos Collective is working on, and probably why most of us are here and are paying attention. And I hope that answers your question, as I tend to ramble sometimes, but that's sort of where I came from, and my perspective on things, and sort of why I'm inspired to be in the middle.
Yeah, no problem, man. I mean, Adam and I are a little bit of ramblers as well, right? We have to try to explain this stuff, at least make it digestible, for everyone who's listening to this on the live stream thereafter or currently. Could you give us the explanation of what the Logos network is? So we've gone through this conversation that Waku, right, is the private messaging a protocol of the Logos network. There's 3 components to this with this larger mission. Could you just, give us the explanation of what it is?
Okay, and I'll try to do it in a TLDR, like I'm 5 fashion. So the mission of the Logos Collective or the Logos Network is to build the tools and the tech that will embolden the network state paradigm or movement, in the sense that, like, creating digital jurisdictions that are borderless, that are outside of the confines of the traditional, geographic government paradigm that, hey, you were born in this location, then you are subject to the laws of this country, and you do not have a choice, to oversimplify things, and to be able to achieve or realize sort of that reality. The very capable and impressive minds have realized that it requires, among other things, a consensus layer, a messaging layer, and a storage layer. And privacy, as was discussed as I joined, privacy needs to be built in, that it cannot be an afterthought or an addition or an add-on. Privacy, among other features, needs to be built in and thought about from the very beginning. And so within those 3 components and the necessity for privacy being built in at the foundation emerges the Logos Collective and the 3 prongs of the 3 projects, and Nomos being the consensus blockchain, privacy first blockchain, Codex, storage, Waku, messaging. And the 3 together create now a paradigm where a network state can, a truly, a borderless digital jurisdiction can actually emerge and operate. Also, each of those components can be leveraged, utilized independently, so that if a private storage solution is required for some mechanism or program or product somewhere that doesn't live within the Logos ecosystem, they can still use Codex. They can still use a combination of Waku and Codex, let's say, or Nomos and Waku, let's say. And you don't have to adopt the entire stack to achieve the use case that you are looking to achieve. But the collective, the 3 of those projects together, as best as people can see it now, will create the paradigm where network states can flourish. That is what things are being built towards, or things are building towards.
Very interesting.
And a little bit of a background story as well. So originally how this conversation even came up, it was about 2 weeks ago. I'm putting it here to the top. I wrote an article about blockchains as countries and how basically countries are blockchains, NFTs are items, fungible tokens are currencies, and you have interoperability protocols or the vessels. And Matthew would reach out to me as part of the Logos network, describe pretty much this is right. And this is what Chair just explained as well. This is what Logos network is attempting to build. Whereas here I've pulled up on the live stream some of the original or early cypherpunks or crypto anarchists discussed this same idea back in 1994, 1996, right? Even David Chaum pioneering early blockchain like architecture. So this is how the Logos network is approaching the crypto space, as he mentions, network state, which is something that Balaji Srinivasan has wrote a book about, is that all of these blockchains that our countries need to operate independently. And for this country of the Logos network, the foundation of it's built on privacy rails. So, and that's what caught me down this rabbit hole, which reminded me of my early days of crypto in 2017, where you find things that aren't just focused specifically on making the price go as high as possible. There's some actual real, initiative and some real ideals that are really being built into this. Sorry, go ahead, Adam.
Yeah. So Chair, great to talk to you, man. This is it's pretty exciting. I guess one question that like Pensive Chepe has hit us up with in the chat that I guess I'd have the same question about is, why build like Nomos from scratch, right? A brand new privacy blockchain when, I don't know, Monero, he's saying secret network, or there are these other, privacy focused, blockchains already. Why build a brand new one from scratch? Is that you just didn't like those initial first efforts, or what's the idea behind, building at least that aspect of Logos?
Because we don't have founder tokens.
Oh, I got you.
And that's it. And that's all I have to do.
You wanted to try your hand at a fair launch. Is that right?
Yeah. No, my caveat here would be that of the three programs, because of what I'm working on day to day, I have less touch on Nomos, so I would almost I'm excited for you to meet Alvaro, the project lead of Nomos, and he will be able to explain much more clearly and technically correct than I am.
Wait, has Nomos launched yet, or it's not launched yet?
It has not launched yet. Nomos is probably, I would say, and I'm probably going to get slapped for this, but I would say probably testnet Nomos next year.
Give us just because we're all, we're in crypto, right? Give us the TLDR on what's going to be the tokenomics of how that's going to work. Not technical, just really technical.
Yes, you have to get on the whitelist, join the Telegram. No, there's honestly, and it's probably better so that I can't spell it, but I'm not sure what the tokenomics situation is going to be for Nomos and how that is going to go. And it's all still very much under development.
Well, at least tell us, is it going to be a proof of work, or is it going to be a proof of stake network?
Yeah, I would say I believe. Ooh, that's a good one. You know what? I was
that early. Where people you don't even know yourself. We're that early. All right, guys. This is we got some alpha now.
We really are. I would say I'm gonna dumb it down to my level, and I would say that it is please, Václav, please jump in here if you hear me saying something particularly stupid. I would say that as was mentioned just now, privacy being built in from at the core, at its foundation, is important for any privacy tool, but specifically for the consensus layer. And there are shortcomings. Monero doesn't completely hit the mark for one reason or another. Zcash doesn't completely hit the mark for one reason or another. And also, neither of those are exactly EVMs in the sense that you cannot deploy arbitrary code as long as it compiles to the network and then run them as programs, whereas Nomos will be. Nomos will have, I would say the way I'm thinking about Nomos, and it probably is incorrect, that it is an EVM style Zcash or EVM style Monero, in that privacy at the base layer, but the ability for people to deploy smart contracts, tokens, all of the other accoutrement that we're used to with EVMs but with privacy as a first-class feature. What the tokenomics will look like, exactly what the technicals are going to be, what it's going to look like to, for all the early participators that are drooling at this, same as I am. I'm not sure yet, but nomos.tech, and you can follow Nomos on Twitter at nomos_tech, is where you will find all of the latest news. But I would just give that account a follow and turn notifications on, as it's still under 10K and it is an L1 that's launching soon. So I'm just gonna leave that out there. But yeah, so that's it. I would say it's like an EVM to really. I'm really done this. Let's have EVM, a Zcash, so that's EVM, or a Monero, that's EVM.
Kerry, you need to stop saying EVM. We don't even know if it's going to be EVM compatible. I'll just say, I'll try to be brief. Few things. So, first of all, what Chair said, and I think I mentioned it before as well, the problem with existing privacy blockchains, privacy-focused blockchains, is that they are not fully private. Yes, the transactions may be private, but the validators or miners or however you want to call them are not private for the most part. And there are various attacks on privacy. So even though you think you may be okay, the Nomos team throughout the research discovered a lot of potential attacks of like, how can I trace whoever is proposing block based on XYZ? So it's pretty complicated stuff. I personally don't understand all that they are doing and they are looking at. But apparently, none of the existing privacy-focused blockchains actually solve privacy fully. They solve some part of the privacy, but not throughout the full stack of what blockchain needs. From the perspective of tokenomics, I'm glad Chair gave you the guidance on how to get the whitelist. Although I don't think even the Nomos people have any idea about the tokenomics. Like, I think it's just too early for us to be thinking about tokenomics, because as Chair said, it's heavily in research and it's going to take a while to get to testnet even. One thing I want to mention, and that's related to his continuous stream of EVM being mentioned throughout the monologue. I don't even know if EVM is going to be the choice, because the choice of how to deploy anything on chain. The reason for that is that there is a VAC. I mentioned the research center VAC, and VAC runs another program or a project called Nations. Nations, I think it's pronounced Nations, Nations, something like that. And the idea of that is the zkVM. So basically, being able to execute anything, any code, any instructions, but based on zero knowledge proofs. So instead of revealing what's being executed and what is executed, you just prove that something that is valid was executed. So that actually might be the poison of choice for Nomos, as long as it actually exists and works. So I just wanted to mention something else than EVM, because there are other options these days, and it seems to be going in that direction. And one last thing I want to mention about Nomos. Nomos is not just your ordinary L1. The idea of Nomos is it will have something called zones, and these zones will be similar to L2s on Ethereum, but much more fluent and much more integrated into the L1, into the actual consensus layer. So if you spun up a zone, it may be that any transaction that you do, because it's going to be based on zero knowledge again, as soon as you do it, it's immediately available in all other compatible zones. So as long as you use the similar APIs and you do not reconfigure the zone in a crazy way, those zones will be separated but also interoperable. So imagine Arbitrum and Optimism. You do a transaction on Arbitrum, minting an NFT, and it's immediately visible, like immediately in the same block, visible on Optimism, right? So something like that is the idea of Nomos and the zones, so that you can quickly and easily form a governance body, a new zone, where your community, where your network state lives and does decision, makes decision, produces value. But you can also instantly communicate and collaborate and interoperate with other zones, because that's how world operates, right? You cannot enclose yourself in a single bubble, and that's how you build. You need to integrate and interact with other entities in that world. So Nomos is pretty complex. And when I heard the presentation, the last presentation I saw about it, I was just like blown away. Like, if this actually works, it's going to be extremely interesting. But the big question is if it's going to work, because there are a lot of assumptions and a lot of technology that's still being developed, a lot of ZK, a lot of communication. Like, they're thinking about basing it on Waku or a mixnet, or what are the other options and things like that. So it's a very complex topic. But yeah, definitely talk to Alvaro. He's a great guy, and I'm pretty sure he will give you more details.
Yeah, please, if one of you guys could help make the introduction, I'd love to talk with him on here, as we want to explore more of the privacy world. Just another piece of information to add here for Nomos. On the website, it says Nomos began as a small subgroup of the Status core contributors in June 2021. Nomos was first announced as core Logos project in June 2023. Obviously, Logos is composed of 3 different protocols, being Waku, Nomos, and the cloud storage one. I don't have the name in front of me, but
Codex, right? Yeah.
Codex, yeah. So just to keep that in mind, I mean, maybe this is part of the feature of making it more private, more decentralized, is that you have different communities that are building different protocols, and you're almost assembling it like you're a transformer at the end of the day. Adam, you have any thoughts? I see you writing stuff down over there.
Well, it's, you try to wrap your head around it, and like, I love that guys are actually working on this, right? It's like, you realize how difficult this sort of stuff is. You realize how difficult it is to get traction. I mean, that's the thing. Most of the world that's involved in crypto right now doesn't have the need for privacy. We don't see it because we haven't been impacted, right? We live in the US. I live in Costa Rica. I have great banks. I never have a problem, right? But I know people who've moved here from Venezuela. They had a fucking problem, right? Or Argentina or Bolivia or wherever. And I think we see it happening all over the world now, where, the big state is coming at us, and you kind of don't need it till you need it. And so I applaud these guys. It seems like the right time to be building something like this as we kind of move into this new age. And it just feels like this is something that is going to be incredibly needed. It's needed now. And it's too bad that the existing blockchain infrastructure wasn't built privacy first, I think. But I applaud the efforts, man. It's like, I want to help these guys try to get the word out, right? It's like, and that's one of the challenges too, right? That so much of crypto is based on, number go up, hype cycle, where's the money going to be? And this sort of thing, it's really hard to get traction on, right? You just look at Monero, which is, even a lot of Bitcoiners will say, well, Monero is the best solution for privacy. It's already there, but number doesn't go up. So it's kind of stuck in this like thing. Well, how does it get adoption when number doesn't go up, right? So there are a lot of challenges, and there are a lot of challenges with messaging apps and stuff like that too. How do you get kind of traction when people don't feel like the need for it, right? We're still using Telegram. Half of crypto uses Telegram. It's like wide open, completely, completely unprivate, right? And yet here we are, like all of crypto's on Telegram, And so there are a lot of challenges around it. And I don't know exactly how to solve them, but I don't know. Just rambling a bit there.
It's been interesting through this conversation. Something I've noticed. Privacy in the crypto space began as kind of this fully complete privacy token, right? Like you have Monero, and then you had Zcash, and these are all blockchains. And now it seems like post 2020, or at least maybe when Waku and some of these application or protocol specific privacy tools started being created, you basically just realized, hey, we can't build it from the layer 1 completely. Right, we basically have to piece these together and build really robust kind of privacy messaging protocol, a robust privacy storage protocol, robust privacy, etc. protocol. And then we have to go about this in a decentralized way where it can't just be one person operating it, right? Like Zuko of Zcash. It has to be built by, basically an entire community or an entire network state to kind of piece it together. And this is kind of what I'm looking at as we've been having this conversation is maybe this is the right approach to privacy, because what we've seen over the last few years is that developers who are getting into the privacy are, being jailed by, surveillance states, or on the other side of it, if you're coming after just the privacy token as one complete piece, if the number doesn't go up, then people just abandon it and call it a failure. So it seems like the privacy community is really going about it in a different way than what's previously been done, which is how you figure it out if that's the right way to do it or not, experimentation. So that was kind of just like something that I've begun to notice now that we've had this conversation for the last hour, and I've gone down this rabbit hole for the last few weeks trying to figure out what the hell all this is.
Totally. I know Big Chief jumped on stage, man. Did you have anything to add?
Yeah, it's really cool what these guys are working on. We're working on something similar on Dogecoin, encrypted messaging app that uses ordinal theory to send encrypted messages from node to node. And then I was thinking, like, all this, like the privacy transactions, once we have encrypted messaging, like, it's really easy to do. You can use somebody's public key and private key pair to create an encrypted message. There's no reason why we couldn't build like a layer 2 that ran through layer 1 to send transactional data, private transactional data. I mean, it's cool what these guys are working on. I like the idea, but I think it's already possible with existing UTXO chains as they are. But yeah, this is really cool stuff.
And so what kind of hurdles, or what's your experience been trying to build a privacy layer on top of Dogecoin so far?
Well, it's right now I don't know how. Like, I can do inscriptions, ordinal inscriptions using Dogenals JS, the application that they released to us. But I'm building a Python. I've built out this thing called Dogecoin Arcade, which allows us to view inscriptions locally off our own nodes, and not using any APIs or anything like that. But I don't have Python half of that allows us to do inscriptions directly from the Python application. That's my biggest hurdle so far. I've already made encrypted messages that are on chain that only the key holder, the private key holder, is able to view. So that's already, and that's like built into Bitcoin or Dogecoin or whatever. So it's not that hard, but it's about putting the data onto the chain itself and the mechanism used. That's the biggest hurdle.
Well, I think what they're actually doing, and this is what I've gotten, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that what they're building is this privacy layer where you don't even know that you sent a message. Nobody can even tell that you've sent a message, right?
Right.
So
right.
It's like an additional layer, right? And we've seen that. I think Pensive Chepe was saying, like, with Monero, like, or some of these, with Mimblewimble and stuff, if they have enough data, they can actually piece together, these transactions. And I think we saw that with even Tornado Cash and stuff, where if you have a rich enough data set and the person sending or receiving the transactions, wasn't really careful enough in the way they sent them, allowing a certain amount of time and this sort of thing, these things can be, maybe not 100% accurately tracked, but still very much tracked with some certainty. So I think what these guys are trying to do is just create this base layer where it's just from the beginning completely private. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I'm kind of gathering.
Yeah, I like that, because even with like MWeb on Litecoin, like you're saying, they can run algorithms on it and find out where the inputs came from and stuff like that. But I think as adoption increases, that the data set will be so large that it'll be harder for them to track. But then at the same time, maybe because of the way that the machine learning works, a larger data set might make it easier for them to track. I guess I don't know. But yeah, practicing from the get is definitely probably the way to go.
Two comments on that. So first of all, I think the larger data set is not an issue from the perspective of compute. And it mostly benefits whoever has the compute. It mostly benefits them if they have more data because they can derive more information. At least it's been the case up until now. And I doubt that the adoption will outgrow the compute power of the big players. And the second story is that you mentioned encryption, and putting encrypted messages on chain is definitely great idea and great improvement, but it does not solve privacy, because encryption by itself does not solve privacy. Jake said, or Adam said, the privacy lies in me not being able to know that Big Cheese sent a message or received a message. That is an extremely important part of privacy that very few people realize. And so there is a mixnet called HopperNet. Also amazing guys. Definitely recommend talking to them if you want. We've been in touch with them talking about some improvements to Waku overall and things like that. But what I want to mention is that I heard one of their presentations, and for example, what they said is that there is a research where just by what kind of data and when and how often you are publishing from your computer or your mobile phone, many of these big tech companies and governments can follow you. We understand that. So now let's use VPN. But VPN only adds a very thin layer of metadata kind of on top of your packets, on top of your communication, or on top of your traffic. So it only takes them a couple hundred milliseconds extra to figure out that it's you communicating. And often you communicating with someone or you doing something is enough to leak enough privacy that you may get into trouble, or that you may be followed, or that you may be a person of interest, right? So that's where anything where we can connect sender and receiver, or when we can see that someone actually sent something regardless of what or to whom, it may be enough to cause problems. So that's where Waku and how Nomos and Codex are looking at things and why they are building things from scratch, because nobody today is doing these things, although they're trying to push on privacy as much as they can.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Amazing.
I think the term's called leakage. Is that correct? Right, where you leak some sort of data that's supposed to be obfuscated through some sort of technology.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, leaking information basically by executing actions online is a problem. Yeah.
One interesting thing I heard, I was actually listening to a talk the other day, and it was this idea of AI agents, right? And, rather than AIs being run by a couple of, small or large corporations or governments that kind of control everything, this idea of each of us having our own AI agent to kind of look out for us, protect us. The interesting point was that, do you think those AI agents, if their duty is to protect you as an individual, do you think they'll lean into privacy-focused messaging and blockchains and that sort of thing, or non-private? And I thought it was an interesting thought, which was like, which would the AI agent choose if he was if your AI agent his goal is to protect you as an individual, which would they choose? And I think the choice is obvious, which actually gave me a lot of like hope, because it's like, if these systems are in place, that would give these kind of privacy-focused blockchains an advantage over non-private blockchains. Which if we believe AI agents are going to kind of run things in the future, actually gives a reason to have a lot of hope around these kind of privacy focused messaging and blockchain systems.
Yeah, I agree. Let's have some hope. Sorry, Vakov. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I fully agree. The AI can be amazing help and amazing curse, or a terrible curse at the same time. I think this, you running your agent locally or on your own instance somewhere in a decentralized cloud or something, makes a lot of sense. And it can actually help with whatever you're doing online potentially. In contrary to every one of us using ChatGPT, asking all these questions and leaking back to the leakage, leaking all the information about ourselves to another company.
Yeah, I agree. Makes you have hope. I had one of the first times I ever heard a thought about the integration of blockchain and AI agents was actually from Arthur Hayes, who is the founder of BitMax, where he said that he believes AI is going to choose Bitcoin as the primary choice of currency or transaction volume across the internet. But that was a few months ago. Who knows now at this point, because everything accelerates so fast. We should probably wrap it up here. Chair, I did want to ask you one final question, as I guess you're the voice or the marketing of the Logos network. What is there to look forward to, or what are the things to follow along between this tech stack of 3 different protocols and a dozen or 2 dozen or so different people who are working on this?
Oh, there's so much. We have in the room with us a very interesting profile. It is a green PFP. Their name is OP1. That is the exit operator. And the exit operator is a conglomeration of all of the, or at least some of the rogue operators at the Logos Collective. And they have built the exit game, which is sort of the public, let's say, coming out party, not coming out party, but like a public, coming out party for the greater Logos Collective mission. And so anyone who is interested in diving in deeper, earning some XP, having access to some early collections that are going to be available, and just diving deeper into the rabbit hole of Logos, the exit operator, OP1, who is down there in the listeners, is a must follow. There is a lot happening with all 3 of the programs and the Logos Collective in general. Some things to look out for. The Codex testnet is coming. It is coming this winter, as best as I can project at this point from the information I'm getting. So I would say very safely December of this year is the Codex testnet. I think the Nomos testnet is a little bit further out. We're looking at next year. The Waku network is live now. It did go live in September of last year, or October of last year, and it is live. The flagship Waku implementation is Status. Status desktop and mobile is in its beta launch now, and very soon we'll have its official release, and Waku will be even more in the wild than it is already. The Waku is being used actively by Railgun and The Graph and others to serve their needs. But if you would like to leverage Waku yourself without building anything with it, then Status app or status.app is where you should go and what you should follow. The official and public release of Status is coming and is incredibly exciting, particularly for me for a number of reasons. But going back to the Telegram conversation and the sad reality, or the sort of kind of funny reality, in that all of crypto is, for better or worse, centered primarily within Telegram and then secondarily on Discord, which are incredibly intrusive, track everything you do. And when it comes to Discord, right down to the keystrokes that you unwittingly give them permission to track when you accept their terms. And that is a very real thing. And only Mac users, it's more apparent to Mac users that happens, but I digress. Status is the answer, and it's in my profile. It's in my bio, and I say it a lot. And I'm going to continue to say it. Use status, and you don't like how Telegram functions. Use status. Discord tracks all of your keystrokes. Use status. You know how they got that Hamas guy the other day, allegedly? WhatsApp got him through his WhatsApp. What should he have done? Use status. No, I joke, kind of, but there is, in terms of what is happening that at the highest level, the Waku network is live. You can build with Waku now for whatever use case you need. Status is the flagship implementation of Waku. It is being released very, very soon, probably next month or so will be the public release. Codex testnet coming in the winter. Nomos testnet probably early next year, mid next year. And increasingly, more and more people are building with Waku. There's going to be a lot of attention coming to Codex and the Nomos shortly after that. And with the exit game brought to you by OP1 and the exit operators at exit.logos.co is your portal to go deeper, to become involved in the community, to ask questions from those that are contributing. And if this speaks to you, if this resonates with you, the exit game and OP1 should be your next destination.
Worded it perfectly. Thank you, my friends, and everyone who joined us today. It was a really fun, insightful conversation. Chair, please introduce me to everybody, all the different protocol operators in the private world. Would love to continue to host privacy-focused shows, as we do believe that this can be a center conversation here coming in the near future. Adam, who do we have on the show tomorrow?
Who are we? Oh, tomorrow. Oh, interesting. Yeah. We're talking to Song a Day Man. So you know him. He's the one who produces songs every single day, has done for, I don't know, a decade. He's suing the SEC along with our friend Brian Fay. And so we're going to have them on to talk all about it and taking it to the man. Love that. So he's always a great guest. So psyched about that tomorrow, 11:30 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah, it's going to be a really, really fun set of shows this week. So appreciate the Waku team for joining us today, Chair and Vaclav and the OP1. And we also had on somebody else in the very beginning, escaping me, but excited to have this conversation. Really, really, really insightful. And I feel like we're going to have a lot more of these conversations. On Thursday, we're going to be hosting the Bob team, the Bitcoin L2. They will be here. We'll be having this conversation. So a lot of conversations to look forward to. If you're unfamiliar with Chris, myself, or Adam, or Emblem Vault, Emblem Vault's the leading cross-chain NFT protocol in the industry, founded in 2016, been building for over 8 years. We host a show Tuesday through Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. So please give the Emblem Vault account a follow. That's where we host all of the shows. Stay up to date with us, the cross-chain world, as we pursue becoming the top interoperable layer of the industry. Again, appreciate everyone who's joining us. Really, really fun conversation. We re-upload this show to our podcast channels, and you can always watch this on our YouTube channel or re-listen to it on the Spaces. Until then, everybody, please enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Make sure that you don't get chopped out of this consolidation period and survive until the next leg up. Until then, have a good rest of your day, guys. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you soon.